back to another episode of the Equity Matters podcast, where we champion equity one conversation at a time. I'm your host, AddisJB3, and I am right now sitting in Bethesda, Maryland. I am here invited for something I mentioned on a few podcast episodes a while back, as we're talking about Black youth suicide prevention and how we can use policy as a lever to drive systemic change. So again, I want to just give a shout out to Brandon Johnson, who you've heard on the pod before, for inviting me out here to share my expertise, which honestly, before I got here, I questioned a lot with my wife. I'm like, why would I be here? I'm not a policy expert. There's other people who are engaged in this work. But after experiencing day one, I realized that I belong here. There's a reason why I'm here. And so I'm just glad to be able to share the things that I've observed, the things that I've seen in research, the things that I've seen in practice as a way to address this problem within our country. What I want to do today is to continue the conversation that we started previously about fatherhood. And so this is Happy Father's Day, part 2, keep your head up. When we're anticipating the idea, or you know that you are about to become a father, everything changes. And I am, in many ways, every father that you could potentially imagine. So I am a father of multiples. I'm a father of special needs. I'm a father of a singleton. I'm also a girl dad. So all the pieces have come together in a way where I have to reconcile all of those different identities, but I'm still James and I'm still a father. You think about the ways that you experience fatherhood growing up, and many ways that can be the way that you follow or the way that you choose to disrupt. And for me, it's a combination of both. For me, it's all about creating this sense of safety for my children. I want them to feel safe and talking to me, safe in the environments that they occupy. And I realized in order to do that, the strategies look very different depending on which child I'm engaging in that particular moment. When you have a child who's mostly nonverbal, who has limited speech, the ways that you make him feel safe, you have to appeal to the things that interest him. And so I've learned that he's a sensory processor. He loves things that light up. He loves toys that you push a button and they respond back to him. And so for me, it's about spending time with him in those type of capacities. We both share a love of Nintendo, of Mario, and being able to sit down and play games with each other. And maybe not in the traditional 2-player game, but maybe we're sitting next to each other playing in a parallel way. That matters. And I've really come to appreciate those things as Elijah's father, in the same way that Jaden to me is inquisitive. He has a lot of questions, and sometimes you feel like, oh, why are you asking me all these things? I just want a minute to stop processing for a moment. I've learned with him, it's important that he has a space to be curious. And I remember being in that same type of place. I remember family saying, oh, James, you talk so much, which is ironic because now I don't talk a lot at all. But the curiosity and the desire for knowledge and this craving is something I want to make sure that I'm feeding into as many different ways as I can. I think when we talk about Black fathers and Black fatherhood in particular, there's a lot of weight on roles and responsibilities. There are different ways that we are expected to just show up as the primary provider. And you can think about all the gaps that exist out there that make that difficult. Whether we're talking about systemic barriers or we're talking about economic inequalities, all of those things play a role in the way that you're able to show up as a provider. And we're also supposed to be the protector. I don't want my children to ever feel like they're in a way that they don't have physical protection. I don't want them to ever feel like they're experiencing harm. And this is something that's come up in therapy quite a bit, as I'm saying, hey, I want to make sure that my kids are always safe. The ability to do that is unrealistic. And it's unfortunate because raising Black youth in this society, you have to be honest about the types of things that they will encounter. And the risk factors that are out there, the political divisiveness, the racism and discrimination, we're well beyond microaggressions at this point. All those things are feeding into their everyday experience. And so as a Black father raising 4 Black children, those are the types of things that are on the top of my mind every time they leave the house. I wasn't a ride the bus kid growing up. And so when I take my kids to the bus stop and I see them go off, all I can do is pray that they're going to come home at the end of the day. And I pray the same thing for their peers and their friends, because we don't know. And unfortunately, it's not promised to us. I also spend a lot of time thinking about this idea of Black leadership and authority as a father, because norms, cultural norms in particular, position Black fathers as the head of their household. They're responsible for making vast decisions. And the decisions that we have to make nowadays, so many competing priorities, so many conflicting things perhaps with our values, it's not easy to make those decisions, but you have to make them. And so what do you do when you want to have your child's first birthday party at a place that may be really expensive, but you want them to have that type of experience? You also have to weigh in the other just numerous factors that are out there on a regular basis. You can't leave the house right now without spending easily $200. Or maybe that's just me. Gas is expensive. Going out to eat is expensive. Everything costs. And the economic cost right now, in many ways, might outweigh what you're trying to experience. It's taken a lot for me coming from where I come from, where there's an abundance almost. Like you have access to the things because it was affordable. That has since gone away. And I don't take that lightly, that I really have to center experiences now. Am I gonna make sure my kids have the best possible experience? With 3 of my kids being born in the same month, it's an expensive spring for us. And so we actually spent part of their birthday month at Kalahari. We were in Ohio. This was our first time going to a water park, and they loved it. And naturally, I'm still paying for it right now. But it's because I care about those experiences. And so some may argue that, well, is it worth going into debt for these experiences? People go to Disney every year. Nobody says a thing. But the requirements to get there are something that you have to take into consideration. I talked a lot in the last episode about this idea of toxic masculinity and emotional expression and strength. And I don't take it lightly that cultural expectations often emphasize kind of this stoicism, this idea that I can rise above my challenges, which you have to have that. You have to have a sense of resilience in what you're trying to articulate, but at the same time being able to express that you're hurt, express that you're sad, applying words to feelings and being able to convey that and articulate it. I've got various ways to do that with my children. With one child, it's, are you hurt? What is wrong? What do you feel? And giving them space to process that. When you don't see that growing up, it can lead to this idea of emotional suppression. And we talked a lot about toxic masculinity, so we've already been there, but trying to find the right balance of resilience while also giving people space and giving children space to be vulnerable. One of the things that we've talked about quite a bit at this policy academy I'm at this week is this idea of powerlessness, and perceived powerlessness is that we think about how power is the ability to do, is the ability to act, the ability to change things. And for children, especially Black youth, in many ways, we've created this relationship between adult and child that is really built on power. We don't create the same kind of space for children to explore and to ask those types of questions because you have to stay in a child's place. Unfortunately, that creates this resistance as children get older. What I'm trying to build with my own family is this idea that you can be curious, you can ask questions, you can get close to pushing the boundary, and then I have to stop you in order to protect you. And I want to make sure that children understand just how far those boundaries are. And when you have this perceived powerlessness, you can't, or you just don't feel safe muddying those waters. You don't feel safe exploring what could be. We talked a lot today around protective factors and risk factors of suicide. And for me, the protective factor that I always jump to is just this idea of cultural heritage. You have to be tied to your identity and your culture, where you come from, the people that you have seen before you, the people who look like you, the people who you have a positive self-concept. And so I've benefited from the ancestry work that I've done. I've learned a lot about where I come from. I've learned a lot about the types of things that people have had to face in order for me to get to the places and occupy the spaces that I'm in today. But cultural heritage in many ways shows up as that protective factor, because you as a father, you have to set the tone. It's my responsibility to create that sense of identity. When I have 3 black boys, it's my responsibility for them to see me as their dad and what that all entails. And so I talk often about this idea of, I want to know how you're feeling, and I also want to be okay with saying sorry. And that's something that I've been challenged with, because growing up, adults didn't say sorry. Adults didn't apologize for things because they felt like they didn't have to. And that goes back to that notion of power. With so many different negative stereotypes and tropes and myths about Black fatherhood, you find yourself not only mitigating those things, but also trying to empower your children. And so if I'm trying to create this sense of identity, this sense of agency, and also this sense of worth, I want to make sure that they understand the spaces that they occupy, they can be safe in, but also that they can thrive, that they can contribute to. When you have children who participate in various extracurricular activities and they come home and say, so-and-so didn't give me the opportunity to share this space, you get hurt, because you don't want to see that perpetuated throughout their life. You want them to be able to stand tall and bold, and people to receive them without the fear of judgment or condemnation. It's interesting that I have a son who at one point in his life told me he wanted to be a mermaid, and he told me that he wanted to be a girl because boys were mean. And I thought long and hard about that, because the ways that I've been oriented, the ways that I've processed the world, that would be identified as feminine, right? That would be identified as, that's girly. Why would you not want to be anything but a man? It's my responsibility to love my child and to understand that you can be a mermaid, I'm still going to love you. If you wanted to be a girl, I'm still going to love you. I'm going to love you whoever you are. And that is not something that is talked about, because we have this preconceived notion of what childhood is supposed to look like. And we also have this preconceived notion of staying in a child's place. With all of those things that we have to navigate as Black fathers, the least that we can do is to show up. And the data suggests that we do that. We do that perhaps more than any other race of fathers. Black fathers are actually more involved and engaged in daily activity than any other race. You can look it up. It's a CDC report if there's any questions. I'll link it in the episode just so that people are familiar. So much about Black fatherhood is about balancing this vulnerability while also humanizing relationships, because we are trained to think of men as these dominant authority figures, that they don't have moments where they're questioning themselves or questioning their abilities. I'd be lying if I said that every space that I occupy, I feel like I belong there. Now, I've been grateful for my wife and fortunate who pours into me, who reminds me that I'm assigned to the places that I occupy. But this self-sabotaging that we do disrupts our ability to maintain relationships. And so as a father, as a Black father, my challenge to myself is to be more egalitarian, to be more nurturing, to know that the dynamic that I have with my children is one that is flexible. It's not only about strict authority, but it's one of mutual respect and understanding. I want to see my children as people first, my people. And I want to recognize their emotions. I want to encourage empathy. I want them to see that they have an option in this world, and that they always have a place for me. And there's always a place for them in my life. I had the wonderful opportunity of interviewing one of my sons. And I'm going to share that at the end of this episode because it was really insightful to hear about what matters to him as we talk about Black family, as we talk about who we are together. And I wanted to do that because he's always asked me about podcasting and why do I do it and why do you keep doing it and how come I've never been on. I want him to understand that this Equity Matters podcast is about role modeling. It's about asking the difficult questions. It's about understanding that root causes hold things in place. And one of the ways that we can disrupt that is by having genuine, authentic conversations. I also want to push beyond kind of where we are right now. And I want to create a legacy of love and resilience, that I want to strengthen our family bonds, because the same ways that family bonds are broken before us and they're fractured and it's difficult to create that emotional intimacy, I want them to see how, as our family unit, how Dad played a role in facilitating that. Dad doesn't just get up and go to work every day. I want to be available. I want to be able to hear the things that they're excited about, the type of things that give them energy, that brings them joy, because there's just this importance for me to facilitate that, but also to experience it, to be a part of it. And I know Equity Matters, it shifts. Some days we're talking about very specific problems. The problem here is that Black fatherhood is not recognized and celebrated in the same way as others. What I experience as a Black dad, I wouldn't trade it for the world, because being able to see my child on the soccer field, or see my child playing basketball, or tinkering with toys, or just running in the backyard frolicking, whatever it happens to be, I want to be able to enjoy that moment. And I know I can easily become preoccupied with the stressors of the day, the things that I'm facing. But to take a minute to pause and to embrace all of the things that they're embracing in that moment, it takes me back. It reminds me of what it is to be youthful, to be full of joy, because the world obviously is a bleak place. There's so many things that happen daily that could dampen our spirit, that question our resolve, yet we still show up. And so for Black dads, my advice to you, the thing that I would hope that we all can share in, is we got to keep our heads up, because there's no one else that can do the work that we're doing right now. There's no one else that your children want to see doing this work right now. And so as I prepare to leave you, I just want you to enjoy this very frank conversation that I had with my son. I'm not gonna lie, I thought he was gonna say a lot more because he's chatty, but I think that he gave a great insight into what matters to him and helps to inform for me how our family moves as a unit going forward. So for now, please enjoy this brief interview between me and my son. All right, we are live. Welcome back to another episode of the Equity Matters podcast. This is your host, JB3, and I have the wonderful privilege today of interviewing my second oldest son. And part of the reason why we want to have this conversation is to really get into the relationship that I have with my children. And so I've just got a few questions that I want to ask you. Again, I told you there's no reason to be nervous. You're just going to have a conversation, okay?
Okay.
So, Jaden, what's your favorite thing to do on the weekends?
On the weekends, my favorite thing to do is probably to play on my phone, but if I don't have my phone, it's probably play Smash Bros. With Dad.
Playing Smash Bros. Who's your favorite character?
Kirby.
Kirby. You're not that good, though.
Yeah, I'm not that good. For real. But with Meta Knight, he's good. He's good.
Yeah, Midnight is good. What's your favorite book or story, and why do you like it?
My favorite book is Ocean Books. It's a chapter book that actually feels good every time I read it. I even read it at night, and it gets me very sleepy. And I also read it right now for like reading my chapters, since I don't have a lot, but I also like this when I read it. Chapters are kind of short, but they're like for my level of chapter.
Okay. Can you share a special moment that you remember having with your mom and your siblings?
A special moment was that one time we were all in the basement and I was teaching my mom how to play Minecraft.
Oh yeah, Minecraft's a lot of fun. How do you feel when we spend time together? What type of activities do you enjoy the most?
Most types of activities is like coloring or playing a game.
Okay. Can you tell me about a time when you felt really happy?
That one time where we were playing that game that we made that one time where we had to choose two like types of food in a category where we would have to choose which one's the best. Or anything in a category.
What do you do when you feel sad or upset?
I usually grab a toy and start messing around with it until I feel better again. Or start hitting a pillow.
Okay. Who do you talk to when you have big feelings?
Probably dad or mom, depending who's at the house, or just both.
And how do they help you?
They help me by telling ways to get better or stuff like that.
Okay. What are some things that help you to feel safe and calm when you're having a tough day?
Things when I'm having safe and calm when I'm having a tough day. Probably giving my parents hugs.
Hugs? That helps you to feel safe?
Yeah.
Can you think of a time when you were scared or worried? And what helped you to feel better?
So, scared? I'm just scared every time I wake up in the middle of the night, but that's not really much of a problem anymore for me, but it used to be. And I always cried and one of my parents would come in, or both, to comfort me. Or I just used to come into my parents' room and sleep in there.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the sharing the bed thing, but if it's a place where you feel safe, that's fine.
Yeah, but you stopping that because my bed is bigger now.
Your bed is bigger now, and you don't have to share a room.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about a time when you were really brave or strong?
Well, the first day of karate, I was feeling pretty strong.
Tell me about it.
So on the first day of karate, I was really excited, and I tried to flex as much as my muscles so they could be pretty good for the first day because I knew I was going to do a lot of punching and kicking. So when we first started, I was so excited. I had to tense my muscles a lot so I could get ready to start punching.
Something that me and your mom really find to be important is making sure that you know that we're proud of you. But we also really try to make sure that you're proud of yourself. What makes you feel proud of yourself?
Probably that one time I got a soccer medal. I was pretty proud of myself for earning it, and it was pretty awesome.
Let's talk about when you grow up, because you're still young, but do you have dreams, or what do you dream about doing when you grow up?
When I grow up, I want a college degree so I can work as a firefighter for a few years. And I also want to get married and have a few children. Okay.
Do you still want to own like a bunch of McDonald's? I remembered you wanted to do that for a minute.
I'll do it for like a year or two.
Okay.
Because I don't get that much from that. And I would rather work as a firefighter.
Okay. Hey, I'm not here to judge. I remember when I was little, I wanted to be like an archaeologist. Like I wanted to find dinosaurs.
Ooh.
And then I wanted to be an architect. So I actually wanted to make buildings, like draw them out. But I can't draw, and I think you know that already.
I've seen you draw before.
Yeah, it's not that good.
It's not the best, but I wouldn't say it's bad.
Okay, fine. If you could be or do anything in the world, what would it be?
If I could do anything in the world, or be anything in the world, first thing first, I would be a person that has infinite money so I could give people money and give money to charity and churches. And if I could be anything, I would probably be every job I could and be invincible so I can't die until it's time for me to go. So.
Let's talk about our family, right? What do you love about our family?
Culture.
Oh, what does that mean to you?
Our skin tone.
Okay. Respect.
Yeah. And I also love the fact that that most of us have some way of like transportation or like communicating to each other. Most of us have that.
That communication is really important to me. Something that I wanted to make sure as I became a parent was that you felt like you could always talk to me. And I know there's times where I might be upset, but I still want to make sure that you feel comfortable coming to me. Do you feel comfortable for the most part?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I know how important it is for you to share your feelings and what's important to you, so I always want to make sure I'm available to do that.
Okay.
What's one thing that you would like to do with our family that we haven't done yet?
I would like a hotel stay with everybody in the family, even Charlie, in like a new state that's not Kalahari, because that's like more of a water park to me.
Okay.
I would like us to do that.
So you really enjoy the hotel overnight trips?
Yeah.
Why?
Because they're exciting to me to be somewhere else. And it's sometimes nervous as long as I'm not going on a plane.
You've never been on a plane?
Yeah, so as long as I'm not on a plane, being on a plane is a little scary for me because I've never been on one. But if it's not a plane, I'll be good. I'll take the car or train.
Okay. What has been your favorite family memory?
My favorite family memory? Probably that one time we always went to Louisiana. I've seen pictures a lot and I really liked the pictures. And it was all when we were grouped together in one big family.
Do you remember the drive to Louisiana or the drive back?
The drive there, it was 2 nights and I had like an iPad or something.
You had a tablet of some sort. Yeah.
Yeah, and I fell asleep at like 10 or something.
Do you remember like being with all your family and going to church, and do you remember any of that?
I don't remember ever going to church there, but I do know that I was with my family.
Okay. And I know family is really important to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because every funeral I go to, I'm just sad.
Well, funerals are sad. And something that I'm trying to get a better grasp of is grief and how to like communicate grief, because I know there's times where it's like, oh, you remember great grandma used to do this, and I say, I don't really want to talk about it because it can be hard for me. I think still trying to reconcile with the fact that she's not here anymore, and it's hard for me because she was so involved and important to my life. And so now that she's not here, there's times where I want to pick up the phone and call her. You know, we used to pick up the phone and say, hey, how you doing? How you kicking today? And not being able to do that, it's hard for me. That's another reason why I don't like going back home. When I go to Detroit, it feels kind of uncomfortable for me. But I do it, obviously. But, you know, it's tough.
It was tough for me at my first funeral since I was only 5. And it was somebody that I didn't know a lot of, but like I visited them like a few days before. And when one of your loved ones died, I remember at one of the funerals that you were just a lot.
Yeah. How does it feel to see your dad cry?
It just makes me want to cry.
Do you think that seeing your dad cry is important? Why?
Because that means he needed some help.
Okay.
To me.
Yeah. I know I often cry at funerals, usually because you're celebrating the life of someone that's no longer with you. But I didn't always see men cry. Like I didn't know that was an option. And I think it's important for me as your dad to show you that, you know, that is one of the emotions that we have, that we carry, and we can do that.
That's why I was so hyped about a movie just full of emotions. Just emotions everywhere you see.
That Inside Out 2?
Yeah.
That you saw with your mom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I never saw the first one. Is it a Disney movie?
Yes.
Okay.
And no, it's Pixar Disney.
Okay. Anything else that you want to share?
I remember this one time, it was just me and my dad. We were in the basement just chilling.
What were we doing?
I'm pretty sure you were playing it. I also saw Elijah there. And you were playing Spider-Man 2, I think. And I was just playing like Pokemon with some random stuff down there.
Cool. Well, thanks for hopping on the podcast, sir. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Peace.
No need to wrap up in any other way than saying equity matters.
Whoa!